Can signing the wrong lease put your business in bankruptcy? Let's find out in this week's Conscious Counsel podcast episode. Welcome to the Conscious Counsel podcast with your host, Corey Sterling. That's me. I'm super excited to give you all of the helpful information to protect and grow your wellness business with both confidence and clarity. This week's episode is a doozy. We're talking about leases. Yeah. The cure for insomnia, reading a lease. If you've ever had a chance to read a 76-page lease, then you know what living really, really is. In all seriousness, leases are a very, very important document because this will probably be the single highest expenditure that your business has, usually for a period of something for 3 to 5 years. As a lawyer in the health and wellness space, I am consistently shocked at how little energy, effort, and attention clients will put into leases, which is why I'm recording this episode today to help give you information, just let you know some of the basic things that you should be looking at and the biggest problems that I've seen come up with leases. So I'll start off the episode by saying that during COVID in 2020 and 2021, the single biggest factor of reasons why I saw my clients going bankrupt was because of their leases. Obviously, COVID was very, very unique situation where people were paying a lot of money for a space that they weren't allowed to use. But to me, what the experience highlighted was, don't people realize this is such a high expenditure and then, they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars each month for this particular space? Do they really know the agreement that they're getting into? And landlords are a little sneaky because they will email you a document that is 50 pages long and you don't understand one word of it. And you're just like, what the heck is going on and what's written in here? And just how much do I have to pay and what am I allowed to use and what are the rules? But unfortunately, it's not always that simple. And it's really, really important to understand some of the basics of a lease. And the first thing that I just want to say is that you are allowed to negotiate. This is a really big piece. Often I'll have clients who will receive a lease from a landlord. They're super excited about a potential space that they want to firm up and that they want to get. And then they'll be like, okay, cool. So should I just sign it? Like read through it and then I sign it? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. The way that it works in a lease is that you are allowed to negotiate. You are allowed to negotiate the price. You're allowed to negotiate the term. You're allowed to negotiate all of the different elements of the lease. And the one thing is that you have to know that you're able and allowed to negotiate. And I think a lot of people sometimes will just sign a lease without thinking about it. And they do that because they just assume that they're not allowed to. So first thing is like, okay, let's get this out of the way. You're allowed to negotiate. The big things that you want to make sure that you get clear on and where I've seen clients struggle is understanding first and foremost that a lease is always given by the landlord or the landlord's lawyer to the tenant. And when they do that, it's always drafted in a way that will benefit the landlord. So more than any other agreement, at law, you always want to be the one using your own contracts, which is why I do my best to support my community and be the one to draft agreements for them. Because when you have your lawyer drafting your agreements, the agreement is drafted with your best interest and to protect you more than anything else. Sometimes the lease will be like 100% in favor of the landlord, 0% in favor of the tenant. It's my job as lawyer to negotiate that, but just have to understand the nature of these documents is for the most part, the lease will heavily, heavily favor the landlord. Now, there's a lot of things that go into it, and I just want to talk about 3 really, really important ones, okay? So actually, it's going to be 4 things, 4 really, really important things. So one is going to be the nature of use. You want to check the lease for what the nature of use is, because a lot of the times the lease will not really be drafted by a lawyer who's paying attention, or the landlord just uses the same lease for everyone. And you have to understand, once you sign the lease, all of your ability to negotiate and power and leverage is before you sign the lease. Once you sign the lease, it's done. It's favored for the landlord. Once it's signed, if you breach the agreement for any reason, they can come after you and they're going to win 99.9% of the time in that situation. So when you're signing the lease, it's allowing you to use the premises for a particular purpose. This is called nature of use. You want to make sure that's what you actually do, and you want to be specific. So let's say you are building a wellness center, and right now all you're doing is teaching yoga, but you're going to do massage, and you're going to do Reiki, and you're going to do health coaching consults, and whatever it is that you're going to do, put all of those things in nature of use. That's the first thing. A second thing is making sure that if you're in a building or you're in a plaza, that there's a provision that says that no one who offers the same services as you will be allowed in the property, in the building that's owned. That's something that's really, really important that clients often don't know about or aren't aware that they should be thinking about. But to the best of your ability, you want to be able to make sure that no one else is able to offer the same thing. If you're a yoga studio in a plaza and there's no provision in there which says the landlord has a restriction of who they can lease to, and they find another yoga studio comes in, you're toast. Not toast, but it'll just be difficult for you. Okay, so we've talked about nature of use. We've talked about non-competing businesses to be on the property as well. I want to talk about personal guarantees. So this is really big. A personal guarantee is it's an addendum to a lease that says if you're signing the lease as a company or as an LLC, that you personally will be able to pay any debts of the company during the time of the lease. So let's say you sign a 5-year lease. After 2 years, you're like, okay, I'm going bankrupt. It's not working. I'm just losing too much money. And you think, okay, cool. Well, I don't have to pay the landlord anymore. I'm done. If you put a personal guarantee, then your personal assets will need to be used to satisfy any debts of the company that signed the lease. So you want to be really, really careful when you're signing a personal guarantee. Other things with lease that you want to be mindful of is understand all of the pricing upfront. Every client who I help advise with a lease, the first thing I'll always say is like, just write them an email and say, can you send me from the past 3 years how much it cost all in for someone to rent this particular space? The reason why is when you go through the lease, there's going to be basic rent, there's going to be additional rent, there's going to be taxes, there's going to be insurance, there's going to be all sorts of things. And I've had clients who have signed leases, didn't really understand that there were a variety of costs in the process. And as a result, their business model was shot because they thought they were paying $600, but when everything was all in, it was $1,000, and that ended up being the difference for them. So you can always just ask and say, hey, historically, how much did all of these things cost? And then the last thing around the lease just to be mindful of is understanding your business and understanding if there's anything specific that you're going to want included. So as an example, a story comes to mind for me of a client I was working with where they had a boxing studio and they would play really, really loud music really early in the morning at like 6 a.m. class 3 times a week in upstate New York. And they had an issue with their landlord and we had to resolve it. And for me as the lawyer, I was looking in, I was like, okay, well, like, do we have permitted use to play music at a certain time at a certain whatever? And the lease didn't have it. And they were already sometime into their lease. And legally, it was very difficult. I was like, look, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to do whatever the landlord says because we didn't include this. Whereas if you were to have the foresight before signing the agreement, that's an example of something that you could include. So if you know that you're going to be doing things at night, or you're going to do things early in the morning, or you're going to be playing loud music, or you're going to have bicycles for cycling classes and just blasting tunes or whatever it is, you just want to be mindful and try to include all of those things up front. And the last thing that I'll say about lease, and then I'm just going to bring all of it together. And I don't really have a story because I've done this so many times, but probably if there's a story that I would just tell, it was during COVID when all of my clients realized that they couldn't break their lease. There was no way out of it. They had no relief. They'd given personal guarantees for it, and it just sucked. It sucked for all of us. It sucked for me. And I learned a lot as a lawyer during that time of how to better protect them and do everything I can to support them. But also just realizing the importance of like basic things in the lease that need to be included and that you have to discuss, and knowing that you can negotiate. So sort of in summary from all that I've mentioned, you're about to sign a lease. Firstly, just like stand back and look at how big the number for all the years is. So let's say you pay $3,000 a month. That's 36 times 3. That's almost $100,000 that you're signing a contract to pay $100,000 over time. Let's make sure that you're allowed to use the space how you intended to use it. Let's make sure that all of that is allowed. Let's make sure that there's no competing businesses there. Let's understand whether or not you need to put a personal guarantee in for the lease. And let's also understand the relationship with the landlord. And the last thing that I'll just say about leases and what's relevant is that some landlords have great properties and they know that they're great properties and they don't really care whether or not you sign with them, in which case you'll have minimal leverage and you won't really have a lot of ability to negotiate. I have another client who just signed a lease. The property was sitting for over a year. And in that case, the landlord was really, really excited to get things going. And so we were able to negotiate differently than we would have been able to otherwise. And I just say this because leases is one of those areas of law that's very much on a case-by-case basis, where you have to look at all of the situations like supply and demand in the market. What's the relationship with the landlord? How badly do they want you? How badly do you want to be there? And then you can decide. As an example, a story that comes to mind was a client in Manhattan who found a really great space, and it was an insane amount of rent. It was more than $20,000 a month, and there was no negotiating power, and the client hired me, and I was like, cool, like, these are all my changes. The landlord came back and was just like, no, you can take it if you want it for that price, but we're not incorporating these changes. And the client took it, which is cool because they wanted to, and they're making it work, which is fantastic. But you just have to know that leases go on a case-by-case basis. There are a couple of things that you're going to want to look at each time. So are you allowed to use it the way that you want? Like, specifically, can you play music at certain hours? Are there restrictions of what you can do, what you cannot do? Are you allowed to have signs? How much are you actually going to be paying for the whole time? Not just these little basic additional and all these sorts of things. If you install something, does it stay with you or does it stay in the place? And just understanding also the nature of the relationship with the landlord. Are they involved? Are they uninvolved? Do they take care of the property? All of these sorts of things. So that's everything that I want to share about leases that I want you to think about and become aware about. And it's really, really important because I think a lot of the times clients just think about how much they're spending on a monthly basis, but they don't think overall how big of a commitment they're making. And I just want everyone to be mindful of these things. My advice always is, you always want to work with a lawyer to make sure that before signing something that you understand what you're getting yourself into, and if there's any red flags that you can be prepared for it. But also just always be real. Be real with the landlord. Hey, can you let me know, are you going to let any other yoga studios in the plaza? Hey, can you let me know historically, what are the all-in costs that I'm looking for on an annual basis? Hey, can you let me know this, out of the other? And you'll see, because it's an important relationship that obviously has a big impact in your business. And I want you to have clarity, and I want you to have confidence, and I want you to be well protected. So if you have any questions around a lease, you can follow us on Instagram at Conscious Counsel. Follow us, shoot us a message, say hi. Before you sign the lease, check in with us, and I want to see you protected. I want to see you have all the amazing things that you want for your business, and I do so with love. So until the next episode, peace.